Board games, board games. I might be talking about all sorts of board games with this person, but I'm not going to shout. This person is Jessica Metheringham, and I have been on many streams with them, and we have talked about this and that. Join us now for another chat. Hello, good morning, good afternoon, good whatever it is, wherever you are. 10 a.m. is UK time for Busy Beats and Board Game Leather. And today's just going to be like a whole hodgepodge of stuff. What I wrote is we're catching up, we're talking about slight sadness, maybe I should have written slight sadness, shifting tasks, tech construction games, and avoidance. I thought we'd just kind of have a bit of a bladder, see how we get on. Uh,
Yeah,
so,
sounds good.
shall we start?
Hmm.
Because this is not a big topic, a big question that we're answering. And whilst those are my favourite shows sometimes it's also nice to just um, have a wee cozy chat with someone. So, Jess, for people who don't know who you are and have somehow stumbled upon this video, um, what would you like to tell them?
Oh, well, I'm Jess. Live in Reading in the UK. For those people who are not in the UK, then Reading is close to London, but not in London. And it's about 30 minutes on a fast train. And I make make a variety of things. So in my day job, then I do sort of a lot of political research, though I don't actually have anything I'm doing at the moment. I do that sort of so that's freelance work. And for the rest of the time, then I make tiny board games which fit onto greetings cards. But I also make bigger games. So we've got Library Labyrinth. Da, da, da. Library Labyrinth is coming out in about April. It is physically, so I believe it is physically still in China, but it has left the warehouse. So it is in
And
that
you
sort
had
of
a
that
couple
journey.
of advanced copies freighted over through air.
So yes, exactly. So we've had a couple of the prototypes to make sure that it actually works, etc. And the things are all in the right place. But yeah, the actual the bulk order will be here in late March, let's say mid-April.
That's really
Basically in
exciting.
time for Expo. Yes, it is very exciting.
I mean, I've never had something come over to me on a slow ship.
Mm,
I mean, maybe things that I wasn't
mm,
controlling that like kind of sailed
yeah,
over because like a little package, but I've never had like a big bulk order. And that
yeah.
does feel kind of like a recent highlights, living life and seeing the sights, recent highlights, playing games and other delights, recent highlights. So how does it feel? Because I imagine that it's similar to the feeling I get when I order something and I've sent all the files
Mm,
and I'm going to get it. I mean, nowadays it's print on demand, it's
mm,
2 weeks and then I get it. Back in the day, it was still being printed relatively locally. And so it would be maybe 4 weeks, 6 weeks maximum,
yeah.
because it was coming from maybe Poland or something like that.
Mhm,
And of course, because it's offset printing, they've got to spend a bit more time gearing it up. But
mm.
between having all these final files sent off and saying, yes, that's correct, and getting it, are you kind of itching at a bit for this? Because this is also your one project. It's not like you've
I
got lots of
am.
equal things
I
on the
am
go
a
on.
little bit. This is our big project. So, we've got little things happening. We've got greetings cards here and there, but this is the big thing. And so, yeah, it feels very strange. It also, see, a lot of time has elapsed since me doing the work on the files. So I'm not the main artist, but I am the graphic designer for this, as well as
Mhm.
so there are two game designers. Me and Mill are the co-designers. Sam is the artist. The art direction was so that's Danielle. It's all very the actual you're putting together as a group effort, but all very interconnected, and then the final, this file, what about this, and the graphic design stuff was me, and so it was me who saw the files last, as it were. It was me who sent them off, put them in the Dropbox. There you go. The game is being made by Longpack. So it was me who sort of said, okay, Longpack, here's all the files and all the back and forth. And there's a lot of back and forth. And then, of course, we got our copy, realized there were a couple of typos, and also one of the colors wasn't quite, the right shade. So, we dropped
Was that because of some file problems on your parts, really? I mean, the typos were clearly your thing, I assume.
Yeah. The typos were clearly
the colors were, was that their...
Yeah, it was a brightness. It was so it was that we hadn't quite calculated for how the printers would do it. We knew that the printers would come out, that it would come out slightly different, but basically we have a color which is mainly orange but a bit yellow, and so we were trying to marry up the two different shades, and they came out looking quite different.
And they are on two different materials. Is that what the issue was?
Yeah, they're on different materials, and it's on...
Yeah, because, I mean, even though, like, CMYK might be a closer thing matched than if you're using RGB, even that, unless you're actually getting them to compare it against a swatch, like, for example, a Pantone color, and say, we need this exact thing. And no indie board game publisher has the money to be asking them to look at Pantone colors.
Yeah, I mean, this is why we get the prototype. This is why we get the sample copy to go, okay, yes, that's right. We only made a couple of changes, nothing major. So, felt like that was actually very well done. But of course, every step takes time, and they've got a million other projects going on. We've got various things, and an email back saying, oh, what about this? And then we've got to think, oh, do we want that? Do we want that? So, yeah, it's taken quite a bit of time. So I feel that, it's not quite that some of the excitement has gone out of it, but it's not the same as when I send something off and then I get it back, 2 weeks later. That has much more sort of, the right now excitement. This is sort of more of a slow build. We've got to build up again.
Yeah, you've got to. You can't be focusing on this for however many months.
Yeah,
you've got to distract yourself with other stuff. And you can't do anything for this project. So you've got to focus on things that you can now affect. I think that's a big part of being an adult, being able to distract yourself somehow.
Yeah, I mean, when the game is actually being manufactured, which it has been now, but when it was actually being printed, there wasn't anything that I was doing, for the game. And then, now it's going on a ship. There wasn't anything I was doing. I mean, there are, of course, logistics and things, but...
I mean, do you have a tracker for the ship? Is it a case where you need to check in like once a week and that would behoove you? Or is it, at this point, totally hands-off? Have you basically got someone managing it that you trust and you know that, okay, it's going to come here eventually?
So we know what the ship is. The ship hasn't left port yet, so we haven't been tracking it. I think I will probably look up the tracker and see if I can see where the ship is, because I have all the details. I just don't know, the website, but I'm sure that it will be fairly easy to work out where you do that. Because I have the name and the, and the number of the ship, as it were.
And you could share that with Kickstarter backers.
I will, indeed. Once it actually leaves, which I think is actually not for another week. I know.
I mean, you could tell them now. Why not? I mean, it's always good to have this information.
Yeah, but I also want to share with them the drafts for the workshop materials, because we're also bringing, we're doing some workshop materials for schools. I want to share those, and I have not got nearly as far with those as I should have got. So,
well, I mean,
this is how it works.
I think that it's all about what's the energy cost, what's the cost to you of doing an update. And I think that's
true.
Even if it's once a week, months and months after it's already funded, I think that people would rather have an update now and then an update a week later, and it's be like, oh wow, there's actually new information. And say,
that's a good point.
It's actually on the ship. The ship isn't leaving port for a while, But this is the tracking information, and you can join us
Yeah.
in watching this ship, and this has got your games, and then tell them about it.
Yeah.
And next update could be, oh, in case you haven't seen, it's left a port, and also here's the
Yay.
things. So you
Yeah.
get, and
No,
then you
that is a
don't
very
need to
good
go
point.
into like the whole long paragraph, because I have this tendency I found with Kickstarter updates to leave it too long, and sometimes when there's no information, it's just a case of I need to be upfront and say to everyone, but yeah, I'm just struggling, to be honest, to hit the once every 28 days, so that yeah, not
Yeah.
that for me would be the Frank West said that that's the upper limit, because as soon as it goes above 28 days, then people see the little notification that says, hey, do you want to ask the creator anonymously for an update? And as soon as people see that, then they start thinking, is something
There
wrong?
haven't been
Have
any
we been
updates.
forgotten? Whereas,
No, exactly.
but for me, I think that my brilliant thing, I'm going to reach over and grab some cards, although calling these cards might be a wee bit of a stretch. So what
Bits
I've
of
got,
card.
no, paper. So this is really cool. I found a thing with I think it was 5x4 on an A4 bits of paper, and cut them out into these domino shapes, which is what I need for my new deck construction game. Have you heard? Have you seen me talking about my deck construction game?
So I have seen a couple of tweets or Facebook messages, but I have, but it's basically no more than Bez is thinking about a deck construction game where she brings out more things in the future, but very gateway. And I'm like, oh, this sounds very exciting. I'd like to know.
Okay, so yes, it is a big project, and I mentioned it in two places asking for tips. So it's been on my mind for, I mean, I guess all of these projects, can you really pinpoint a genesis? I've been playing Magic the Gathering since like third edition, fourth edition. Fourth
Okay.
edition was just coming out,
What
and
edition are we on now?
it's like I don't know. It's they've stopped numbering them because the
Right.
numbers got too high, and then they started numbering them based on the year.
Right.
And I
Fair
think
enough.
it was about 10th edition that they decided, yeah, we're going to stop numbering them, and that was about 12 years ago.
Right.
um,
Okay.
so basically, this was about 94 that I started playing a couple of years after it was released. And I was there for the Legend of the Five Rings cards game. I was there for XX Xenophile, which was having a I was never allowed to play it, even though I really pleaded with the person selling it because it was an 18 plus game, and I was clearly not 18 or more. And looking back at it, it's like I was just really excited by this one card, and it had this goofy sense of humor. And now going back, and it's been remade into other stuff. It's got this beautiful comic book art kind by Foglio, vaguely reminiscent of Asterix, that kind of
Okay.
expression. And I was there for Netrunner, and I've yet to play Vampire the Eternal Struggle, but I was there for seeing all these discontinued deck construction games, like the so many that I've forgotten the name of, but one that I really remember is Huntic. And even though in theory you're meant to get a bunch of boxes and a bunch of boosters, and you either play with the good people or the bad people, that's the one deck construction rule. And instead, I got all these starter boxes for literally like £2 each. It might have been like £1 each, but £1 was a bit less in those days. So it was about £2 of today's money, let's say.
Yeah.
And I had maybe 3 or 4 of these, and I was like, cool, I can play with this. I played with one of my best friends where we would meet every week for games. And then I had one box with all the same cards. They had one box with all the same cards. It was only 60 cards. But then pondering out, okay, let's just say there aren't any deck construction rules. We can use any cards we want from here. We can make the decks as small as we want. And we can obviously mix the good and bad, because that was, yeah, we've got a small number of cards. So, and for me, that was a really fascinating deck construction challenge. And I do love pre-release events where everyone goes into a system and everyone has access to the same stuff. And then you come out and then you feel like, wow, that was a nice evening. And I saw new stuff. I was challenged in a new way. And I would like that sort of release event. But then my issue is that quite often you end up paying 20 quid, which is reasonable for an evening's entertainment. But then you go away with all of these cards, and the cards don't really mean anything once you're, yeah, they don't, it's not like they can be used for making a worthy deck for what other people have constructed. Because if you want a deck that's going to be played in what they call standard, which is the normal, you go to a place with your own deck, that you kind of need access to everything from the past couple of years. And it's going to cost you hundreds of quid to get a starting deck, which is kind of unreasonable as an accessibility, financial accessibility. Going there with a, okay, I'm going to spend 20 quid. If that was, okay, I'm going to have like, I'm comparing this to going to the movies and maybe getting a wee snack. Sure, it's kind of equal, but then my motive was, I want something where you've got the maximum financial accessibility possible. And I know that marketing and game design are two separate things, but whilst people will be attracted by the, what's going on in the game, my reason for making this is I want to bring deck construction in a financially accessible way. I want it to be like a box of maybe 50 cards, and then from these 50 cards, you look through and then you make your deck, and your deck's going to be about 20 cards, and then you think, okay, these are the cool bits, and I'll get rid of the other bits, and you've got some real deck building opportunity. But both, you don't need to scour the internet to learn what all the other cards are. You just pay, like, maybe it's 10 quid. Like, it'll never be more than 12 quid of today's money for like a wee box. And then you get that. And, okay, cool, I've got this. And someone else gets that. And then that will be the standard format. And like, when stuff is desirable, if people want to play with everything mixed in together, like there'll be the latest box formats, there'll be the one box formats where you play with one box from any time in history, and there'll be all the boxes formats where you play with any card you want. But the best cards that people are like, oh, that's really cool cards, I'm really committed to reprinting them, because Garfield has gone on record as saying there shouldn't be any card that costs more than about $5 to $20, and more than that feels wrong. And this is something that they've said, well aware that there's cards that cost literally thousands of dollars, which is a ridiculous barrier. But even that's like 5 quid per card. If you've got like 40 interesting cards in a Magic the Gathering deck, that's still 200 quid. That's still kind of unreasonable. And I would like it to be at a point where it's like every good thing will be reprinted. You'll never be short of something from a playability point of view, but what there might be is alternate art. So the collectability might be, okay, I went to this pre-release or this release event, and I got this, and then I got this special card just for attending. It's exactly the same as this other card, but it's just got slightly different art, and I can show off. And then this other card I got because I won, and this little creature has a sock on it. And that's just because I won. Anyway,
so it's finding the Easter eggs which are in the art rather than finding a card which has separate powers.
Yeah, like, I mean, hopefully the art, it might be Easter eggs, or it might be just like, wow, this is done in a completely different way. Like, if at some point it's like, yeah, let's get a very small prints run, let's make them more expensive, and this is going to be done by a special artist. And they've done some amazing stuff, which is gameplay. It's exactly the same, but if you look at it, it looks completely different. And so you're like, hey, what's with that card? They're like, yeah, this is because I bought that cool exclusive thing. Ha ha ha, la di da. And people want this kind of
Mm.
customization. But fundamentally, it's going to be really accessible. That's my whole goal.
Mhm.
And so I thought, okay, what if it's 20 card decks? How can I make this work? Well, I feel like one idea was to make it multifunctional cards. And another idea I had was what if you kind of put cards together? So
Mhm.
my cards are deliberately domino cards. So this is a gizmo. And
Mhm.
what I've got is that gizmos are things that give you resources. So you spend a resource, which is what the question mark means.
Mhm.
And then this one, when it's activated, you gain a circle or a square. And then
Mhm.
the other one, you just
Uh,
it
yeah,
turns
the other
one
side I can't
circle
see. The other
into
side
three
goes
circles.
from 1 circle to 3 circles.
It basically generates two
Mhm.
circles, which is pretty good, but you do have to have your circles to get started. I mean, it might
Mm.
be slightly too good. Maybe it should be 2 to 4. Anyway, that kind of balancing
Mm.
is way off the line. And I'm still at the how can I make this interesting? And the bit
Mm.
that, um, like, obviously, how you've got gizmos, you've also got these creatures. So the creatures, you might add little eyes to them,
Mhm.
or if I hunt
You've
for
presumably got a tail somewhere.
there might be like little this
Hey,
heals
tail.
stuff.
Mm.
So like
Yeah.
the eye helps it attack. The this helps it steal resources, which is obviously powerful. And if you want it to be even more powerful but a little more costly, you can have a mouth, which is really
Ooh.
good at attacking. Like that's hopefully it looks a
Mhm.
bit mean because it is a
Yep.
mean mouth. Anyway, so that's the overall structure of the game is you've got the small hand size which is effectively doubled because every card you can either play
Mhm.
it for this part or you can play it to
Yeah.
generate resources or discard cards or shuffle cards into deck or destroy stuff of your
Mhm.
opponent
Yep.
and all sorts of stuff typical that I'm not I'm not at the working out what the cards are stage yet. What I did was Friday, I finally, this had been percolating in the forefront of my mind, let's say, since October, when I shared my idea with Glenn
Mhm.
Ford. And I was like, hey, I've got this idea. What do you think it's possible to make 50 cards? And how small would the deck need to be for it to be a feeling of deck construction, and we broadly agreed that if you've got 20 cards deck sized, then that's enough cards that you're getting rid of that you feel like you've had a lot of input.
Mm.
Because if you're using half of them, it feels like not quite enough ownership. But 40% of them, I feel like I really own my deck, and that felt like the kind of cutoff point. And
Mm.
so then I've been percolating, I've been working out how to make this work. Friday, I drew up some cards. I finally playtested it a couple of times with two people at the Friday daytime playtests. We played it 3 times over the course of an hour and a half and had a big chat about it. Um,
Mm.
it and it seems to be about half an hour for your first game and maybe 15 to 20 minutes for your subsequent games, which seems like a good thing. Like the third game that they played was about 10 to 15 minutes long, which is about it is a bit faster than, especially than Keyforge. It's a little bit faster than um, Magic the Gathering, I would say, which often goes to time. Like
Mhm.
if you're playing 3 games within an hour, it's often, oh, you didn't finish. Well, you need to play 2 more turns, and that's I think
Mhm.
it's 5 more turns, which feels a little bit unsatisfying because even if you're on the losing end, you want to say like, well, maybe I could come back, maybe, and instead it's just whoever's if you don't finish, then it's officially a draw,
Mhm.
and obviously then you get into the whole thing of people playing too long or whatever,
Mhm.
but people did really enjoy the modularity, and I played it twice yesterday with Doric, which is why this is a recent highlight for me,
Mm.
because normally in this section I only talk about yesterday. we talked about it, and I think that I've got an idea of what I'm going to do for Friday, which
Mhm.
is for Friday, it's not just going to be your health is some abstract thing. Your health, I've decided, is going to be the backs of the cards are going to
Mhm.
be a third utility. So the fronts will have
Okay.
two, the backs will be like a castle. And so
Mm.
what happens is that you've got your castle, you start off with some cards face down, and this will be a generic like right now I'm not going to have any art there. Like it doesn't need
Mhm.
it. But eventually it will be like Carcassonne, but lots more fantastical, like Carcassonne through Doctor's Use. Imagine something like that.
Mhm.
Uh, and then it's going to be we get our towers. I've got my tower. Maybe it's more of a tower than a village, and it's like,
Mhm.
oh, check this out. And then I've got these little turrets, which could be on the fronts of the cards and could be added onto the castle to
Mhm.
strengthen what I've
Yep.
got in terms of my life and health, and add on extra defense. And oh, here, any creature which attacks suffers one damage just for attacking me, which is like
Mm.
something like that. And then it would be things analogous to enchantments. And then we've got the three types of permanents. So we've got the creatures that you can build,
Mhm.
and they need to be complete before you actually use them. We've got the gizmos, which can be incomplete,
Mhm.
and you just use them to generate resources. We've got your castle, which is all about your defense and your life. And
Mhm.
then your cards can be any of these things. And I was previously in a one play per turn mode, which was kind of working but was slowing down the game. We want some bigger swings, and we want some turns where it's like, oh, I get to do this massive thing. And so
Mhm.
for that reason, it's going to be play as many cards as you want, as long as you've got resources. But to each creature or each object that's in front of you, you can only play one card to it once, if that makes sense.
Mhm.
So you can either add to this creature or attack with it, add to this gizmo or use it, and you've got to kind of decide where what you're doing.
Mm.
And that's where I am. This is it's like probably the big thing on my mind from an initial design point of view. Obviously, I'm aware that a game about selecting 7 cards, speedily searching for synergies, need to do the final developments and
Mhm.
get that all sorted, which I'm moving towards hopefully in the next weekish. And it's unlikely to be done for Aircon, but
Mhm.
hopefully around that time. And yeah, obviously categorical, it will definitely be done for UK Games Expo and be out by then. But yeah, this is just an idea that I have, and my current thought is trying to get it in a stage where I can proudly share it in a busy bargain bag for my
Mhm.
leaving party and say, okay, everyone gets a bag of this, and
Yeah.
like a big scale
Mm.
testing. And if you and yeah, this and at some points I might even go back and change things, but this is like going currently I'm moving towards let's firstly solidify the basic rules and
Mhm.
then I will start working on the final set of cards. But the interesting challenge is that I can't just be like, do all the rules, finish
Mm.
all the rules, and then do the cards because they need to be done a bit at a time. And
Yeah.
it's working out which order I do these things. And when I asked on Reddit and um, yeah, Facebook, my real hope was that someone would be like, well, this is the way to organize the balance. This is the ideal way. Because there was someone
Mhm.
who'd worked on Marvel Champions who gave me a bit of advice of ignore the marketing for now. You're thinking too much about
Mm.
marketing. But at the same time, for me, that marketing is like realistically,
Mm.
I can't ignore it because yes, you work for Fantasy Flight Games and someone else took care of all of that. But I need, and realistically, I'm thinking when this gets released, it might start off basically in just 1 or 2 shops and doing organized play
Mm.
repeatedly in those places. And anyone on the internet who wants to buy copies for themselves can also buy it. I mean,
Mhm.
it will be posted, so obviously I'm not going to stop people paying me money in exchange for stuff. But it feels like I really want, rather than try and go everywhere and not succeed, I want to focus on just 1, maybe 2 shops and be like,
Mhm.
okay, we are going to do this here. Can we organize a way where it's advantageous for both of us to have a weekly meeting of this, that people
Mhm.
will be excited to do this on a weekly basis, and maybe every month there'd be like 3 weeks where it's just the normal game, and then
Mhm.
people come in and then they compete, and then maybe 1 week where it's oddball rules, and this month
Mhm.
there's no minimum deck size, so you could use a deck of 10 cards if you want and have an even tighter deck, and so that's going to encourage maybe some faster plays. What would that be like? Maybe there's 1 month where, okay, you start with extra health, so it's going to
Mhm.
push you into a different style of gameplay. Maybe in this um version, everyone gets this one special card to add to their deck that they have to use, and you get it at the event, and it's like, okay, this is an interesting card. Now, how do I use this?
Mhm.
And hopefully, all of these events would be like, okay, a participation award and also a winners award. That's
Mhm.
what I'm broadly thinking. Something that encourages people to say, oh, cool, I like these creatures. I like having this different arts, and
Mhm.
that's my yeah. What do you think of that?
So
Am I doing too much? Am I being too ambitious? Am I distracting myself from things that I should actually be doing?
no, I don't think you're doing too much. I don't think you're being too ambitious. Because when you get an idea, you've got to run with it. You've got to say, okay, right, this is where I'm going with this thing, and it would, and to sort of force things onto the back burner when they don't want to be on the back burner doesn't actually do anybody any good. So no, you're not being too ambitious, and yeah, it is really good to think about these things. Now I think you might be jumping ahead a little bit and thinking about how people are going to feel when they're playing the game and how they're going to, and that's great. You might be thinking a little bit more, too much about that at this stage. Though it is really good to have an idea of what you're going towards. I've got a few card games, that I'm sort of playing around with, and I have a really clear idea of what people are going to feel when they're playing them, and sometimes the card games completely fall over. Um, but that's because I'm trying, new trick taking games and things. Um,
It
so
seems like
yeah.
that for me. That's almost like a guiding star.
Mm,
That if I deviate from this, then something's gone wrong. And the
mhm,
basic principle is you will be able to join a thing, and when I say it's £12
mhm,
maximum accessibility, maybe we work out that okay, I'll work out a system with the shop that if you don't already have your own deck, then it costs you £15 entry plus you get something from them like a meal,
yeah,
or
yeah.
it might be even more, and you get like a really nice, I don't know, but like it will be some way where they're kind of doing a deal where I take a bit of a hit, but
Mm.
I still make some profits on the thing, but then
Plus, you get
hopefully
people playing it. You get more
and
people playing it, which is the point. Yeah.
and hopefully they get yeah.
Mm,
And for me, it's I want people to be able to go to this event, play with their deck, be like, oh, that was cool, and like have these big release events where it's like, okay, this is like just version zero. This okay, now it's the second release. Okay, now cool. Let's all go in, and there's not been any information on the internet because no one's been leaking it because Bez isn't big enough to have stuff leaked on the internet. I mean, I'm not like Wizards of the Coast
not
or
yet.
whatever. and and then the first time that anyone sees it is when it
Mm,
goes into this shop, and they're like, oh cool, we'll all see it on this day. And I might kind of say to the shop owner, like, I have to trust you to not open these until this specific date.
yeah.
And then everyone's exploring these together, and I will need somehow to get a small group of playtesters who are willing to do stuff, but and make sure that they never. That is also a challenge because one of the people on Friday did
Mm,
say, yes, absolutely, this is my bag. If you gave me the cards, I would go off and play test it in my own time, which is a good sign because it is different enough from other CCGs. I think that the thing that
Yeah.
is going to bring people towards it is the modularity and the
Yeah. See, there
construction.
are two things that really appeal to me. Firstly, the financial accessibility. So I haven't actually got into any of these games particularly. I know about them. I can, I have friends who are into them. I have friends who play Magic, but it's never been something which I've personally got into. So, but I do recognize that financial accessibility, that is a big thing for these sorts of things. But the
Until they
second, yeah,
get discontinued and then everything's ridiculously
yeah,
cheap.
exactly, yeah.
But then you've run
yeah,
out of people to play with.
yeah. But the thing that I really like, and the thing which I noticed there, was the module nature of it. The fact that they're domino size cards, and so I've been playing around an awful lot with double cards. But all of the ones I've been playing around with have just been, you know, they're one line. You put them on top of each other. So I've got a game, for example, I'm testing at the moment, which has got 3 cards, and you always put down 3 cards, and there are 2 halves to each card, and you need to have 3 of the same, and so there's a 4th half that pokes out. If that makes sense.
I'm trying to
Yeah,
imagine it. So like this would go
yeah.
here,
No, you put them on top of each other like you were
like
doing.
that. Oh,
Nope.
okay.
No, they're all the
Oh,
same
just straight,
direction.
like
They're
just
all
straight like that.
portrait. No, so it covers half exactly.
Oh,
Yep,
okay.
exactly like that. So you've got a row of 4. Sorry, 3 there. You've got a row of 3 I've got, and that shows you 3 halves. And the 3 halves need to match, but then of course you've got a 4th square, which is something else.
Yes, yes.
So I've been playing around a lot with that sort of thing. Which is not as which is so I've been doing it with traditional cards, and you can't because traditional cards are not the same, so neither poker nor bridge cards
Yeah, you
are
need that
the
2
same
by 1
length and height.
ratio to be
Mm.
able to put it
Yeah,
under.
exactly.
And I've used a technique
Mhm.
of tucking, and I know that some people find it marginally fiddly in certain games.
Mm.
I saw some complaints in Stonemeyer's latest release, but for
I
let
think
me
it's
try and find a
fine.
little module.
I like tucking things
So,
under.
like,
Yeah.
kind of for me, it makes a big difference whether it goes on top, then you've
Mhm.
always got this bit, and then it's like, okay, if we work this out, then the bit that emanates from the center is
Mhm.
always going to connect. And
Yeah.
theoretically, I'm not sure whether there should be yet, but I asked my friend
Mm.
Doric yesterday, who helped me, should there be potentially things with 2 different halves on, where this half is a
Mm.
monster half, this half is a gizmo half? And Doric said, maybe, try it out. Then I asked,
I
what
would say
about,
100%. I would say
okay.
100% you should have those. So I
And then the other
really like the
question was 2
modulation.
spells, but then Doric, which I agree with, said, no, that's too much text. I don't like reading that much text, and it's not as exciting.
Well, it doesn't. So I think you can't have, or not can't have, but
You
I think
shouldn't
you've got
have.
to make you shouldn't have 2 things which are too close to each other,
Mm, mm,
because you
mm, mm.
want to make it a choice between this type of thing or this type of thing, rather
Yes.
than just, "Ooh, do I get, the same type of thing, but this one has 4 tentacles and this one has 4 claws?" So I don't
Mm.
think you should have 2 different bits of the, creature on there,
Oh,
but a
absolutely not.
creature. Yeah, exactly, but a creature and a gizmo, I think works really well, because 'cause they're 2 different things that you're using for completely different purposes.
Mm-mm.
Mm.
And it's been really fascinating. Just, I will admit, on Friday, I arrived a bit after 10. I'd printed out
Mm.
all of these bits of paper, and I spent basically all of the breaks just drawing cards and
Yep.
trying to work out what was going on. So, yeah, and in the process of doing that, I kind of started thinking, okay, maybe the circles are more about protection and life, and the squares are more about attack. So I've started giving them certain personalities, and there maybe in the end there'll be no resources at all. I don't know. Maybe,
Mm.
and the combat could work in so many different ways. Should the combat work in the way it currently is I'm attacking you, and then when I add a
Mm.
castle, it'll be I'm attacking your castle, and you can
Mhm.
defend if you want. And then if the monsters win, if one is stronger than the other, then the loser gets a module removed. And so that's kind of what happens. So it's no, oh, one dies. That feels a bit sad, especially when you've put so many cards
Yeah.
into it. So just saying you have one module removed, that's still pretty bad. And if I want
Yeah.
to make it worse, I could say the winner chooses which module gets
Mm.
removed, because mouths are generally better than eyes
Mm.
in this
No,
game,
I
at
think that
least.
makes, that makes perfect sense. And you know, combat games of that nature are not what I'm naturally drawn to. I
Mm-mm-mm.
am, I do like a good take that game, but it's more of a sort of a sneaky, take that sort of,
Mm-mm-mm.
and I think that those kind of mechanisms where you're like, okay, yeah, I can choose which bit I'm taking off your castle or your creature or whatever, that makes perfect sense to me. That seems to be, yeah, that just seems instinctive.
I mean, I have to admit, I'm not a big fan of combat as a thing, but
Mhm.
it is very intuitive, and I
Yeah.
always maintain that magical wizard combat is the easiest setting slash trope to have any game in,
Yeah.
because y- magic, well, you can explain this all because it's fantastical. Who cares? Yeah, that's
Everything
and
goes.
if it's combat, you know exactly what you've got to do.
Mm,
I
yeah.
would say the simplest objectives are either most money or yeah,
Fight.
combat. Those
Most
are
money or most hit points on the other person. Yeah.
everything else.
Mhm.
And even though it is kind of generic, that then does mean that going forward, it would allow me to generate more cards and play with it a little bit
Yeah.
more. And I don't want it to be like super gruesome or anything. Also, I'm not ruling out the
No.
idea that one day there might be like an HR Geiger type art treatment on one of these. But
No, you gotta have it as sort of, cartoon art. I mean, it,
oh, it like by default, but like if I
mm,
want to make specific things for
mm,
like those limited releases for the collectability part, it's like one
mm,
person's just got this box of HR Geiger that there were only 100 released of, but not in the days when 100 takes me a month to sell, but in the days where 100 takes me like 1 second to sell.
a minute.
that,
But I mean, yeah,
I might be being slightly kind of I'm aware that I'm being a bit
yeah.
ambitious.
Creature creature versus castle combat makes a lot of sense. Or not,
Awesome.
yeah. That kind of, I mean, plus it's
And
alliterative, so
presumably any
which is good.
structure would work equally if it was a tower or whatever.
Yeah, but castle and creature both start with C's, and it's
Mm.
combat as well. So, yeah, there is an element, yeah. But that kind of thing that you've got, that you've got a creature there, and they're doing stuff, and you've then got some sort of structure that they're trying to, break down the door or whatever. That makes perfect sense.
Well, I'm glad that it seems to have attracted your attention.
It
And
hangs together. It does.
maybe once I've got something that I feel like there might be a very private print run
Hmm.
of I don't know how many, just enough for people who are like, yes, I'm going to playtest this. So
Hmm.
if you, Jess, or anyone out there is thinking, you know what, I would take. This sounds
Mm.
like an interesting project. I would be willing to, once the overall rules are done and Bez is interested about specific cards, you
Mm.
know, prices and like how the cards fit together. I would be interested in getting in on that. So
Cool.
if that is you, let me know, and I will
Mm.
send you some product, and you can hopefully find someone to play it with. One for
Mm.
you, one for someone
One for
else.
them. Cool.
Mm-mm.
Absolutely. That sounds
But
cool.
but yes, we weren't just talking about your Kickstarter and my thing. We were talking about your your recent well,
Mm.
your more recent
Cards.
Kickstarter projects where you felt like you were expecting it to do better than the last one and it didn't.
I was slightly disappointed. I mean, so what it was is so this was my fourth Games on Greetings cards Kickstarter, and this is one where it is logic cards, so they're puzzly cards, but I was also selling a fair number. There were some of the older greetings cards I was selling as well. Now every time I've done the Games on Greetings cards, they've got more each time. Well, I mean, the Valentine's cards last year actually got slightly less, but that's because I was expecting people to only buy the one card, which makes sense. And so, so I put the threshold, the funding threshold was much lower. So, the percentage was much higher. Now, this one did fine. It had a respectable amount of money. It had the sort of money that didn't make me sad, but it was just like it wasn't higher than the last one, and there is that slight disappointment. So yeah, there's that drive, I suppose, to do better and better each time. Yeah. So roll and color Christmas cards. Um, got so I got 106 backers there, and that's about £900. Roll and color hearts, yeah, 800 and something, I think, 890. Roll and color hearts was 90 backers, and it's only 253, but that's because they were basically single cards. Penguin pairs was 1276, and that was 156 backers. And then for my recent one, then it was 79 backers, and it was more than £1,000. 1,133. Which
So
is
this was
fine, and
bringing in slightly more per person.
yeah, it is.
Is
What
that
that would
because people are also buying the older ones at the same time?
exactly, they're buying the older ones at the same time. Um, Plus, actually, there was more shipping on that one, so shipping is included in all of these, and
Ah, yes, so that's
yeah,
kind of eating into it. So even though it
yeah.
says more on the front end, it's going to be a roughly equal amount on the back end information.
Yes, and it wasn't that much more shipping. It was only about £50 or something more shipping, because for the Christmas cards it was UK only, far more backers, and each of those were UK shipping, which, when you're getting a stack of cards, most of them I was sending out as a tracked 48 parcel, so that's £2.90, I think, or £2.70, or and then these ones, there were more people buying them to go to the United States.
Mhm.
So there were fewer backers, but quite a few people were getting quite a stack of cards. The maximum that will fit into a large letter to the United States is what they were getting.
Wow.
I have carefully measured, and that's what fits in. um, so yeah, so there were a lot of things to be sold on this, and I think the the point I'm making is that there was that bit of, should we always be needing to do better every single time? Do we always need to get better and better? Because actually, this was almost the same as the last one, but it wasn't more than it. It wasn't better than it. And there's that little bit about, do we, that drive to always do the
Mm-mm.
best that we've done each time? Yeah, what do you think,
It's an
Baz?
interesting question because, sorry to go back
Mm,
to TCGs.
mm.
Like
That's what's on your mind, so
I was
that's what's
watching
on your
an
mind.
interview
Yeah.
yesterday with someone who's I'm not going to name names of, but what they said was, look, we're not trying to be this big behemoth. We're not trying to compete with um, Magic the
Mm,
Gathering or Yu-Gi-Oh or Pokemon or something
mm,
like that. Because there is space in the market for indies, and we're
mm,
just trying to be a big indie thing. And like for them, because of organized play, there is a requirement to have a certain amount of critical fan base. But for a project where one person brings the stuff to the table or it's just a solo endeavor, it frankly in terms of the enjoyment value of one
Mm.
person, it's roughly equal if they are the only person in a 5,000 mile radius playing and they can't play with anyone else because they'll just show it to a friend who will,
Mm.
hey, here's the game, we'll play it together. Or if everyone around them is playing. I mean, it's okay if everyone around them is playing, maybe it's even a reason for them to not buy it
Mm.
because, hey, well, my
Yeah.
next door neighbor bought your game. It's so popular. I mean, out of everyone on this street, 90% of the people have your game, Jess. So, I think you're just too popular. I'm not going to buy your game. But in all seriousness, I think that there is, with corporations, once you sell yourself publicly, there's a requirement to keep growing and growing, which is very unhealthy. And a quick hello to Timmy. I hope that you are generally well. Lots of love. But I think that generally, if you've got, I think it's completely ridiculous and a problem with capitalism that there's this need for people to become better and better and bigger and bigger. And I
Mm.
think that's a big problem with modern day magic, frankly. And a lot of people have said this, where they said, we are going to double our profits within so many years. And they did
Mm.
manage to do it. And then they said, now we're going to double our profits again, because that's the way that they can pay dividends and all those things. But in a cottage industry where it's one person doing it out of their house, ultimately what you need to ask yourself is what makes it worth it to you? What are you what payments like would actually reward you for your time adequately?
Mm.
Because and have you been doing too many? I mean, I'm looking
Mm.
at the first one, which was um wait, is that right? November 2022. Yeah, January 23. Um, oh no, that's the
So
last
what is it
update.
now? So I've had two Christmases. Basically, I've been doing so the first greeting cards came out not the Christmas that's just gone, but the Christmas before that.
Yeah, 21.
Yeah.
So in 1 year and yeah, 3 months,
Yeah.
2 months maybe. You've had four things, and so that's about three a year. Let's say.
Yeah. Yeah, I think the
Is
idea,
three a
yeah,
year
is
a
that
bit
too
too
many?
much? I don't know.
Mm.
Or is that actually, or conversely, like how much energy does each Kickstarter take you? What do you see as the moments of this is what's costing me energy, and what do you
Mm.
see as the moments of sure I hope to be paid, but this is the moment that I'm really loving, and this is the absolute delightful part.
Mm. So I do like these. I think there are probably two things that I particularly like here. One is um, that each card that it's a small project which I can easily finish, and there is something really good about saying, "Oh, actually, yes, I can do this." I really appreciate that it's a small thing. It's over quickly, and I get that sense of, "Hey, I finished something! Yay!" So there is a real adrenaline rush when you've finished something like that. The other thing the other thing I really like about these, because they're small projects, then it gives me a real chance to experiment with different things that you're doing. Hey, so it gives you a sense, that you're like, okay, right, what can we get on a greetings card? What's small enough? What sort of roll and write games? So you get this chance to go, oh, okay, let's do some experimenting here. Let's see what sort of things we can make, and that often leads to mechanics for other games. Um, but I do really like the format there. So, yeah, I think probably the slight disappointment there, the slight sadness, I think probably just comes from a sense that I feel like I ought to be getting more followers and I ought to be doing better. But that's not necessarily the case, I suppose.
I mean, there is a question of did you market it enough? I mean, presumably you told all your previous Kickstarter
Mm.
people about it, and did you share it as much as your previous one?
Uh, I think I shared it almost as much as my previous one. Perhaps not quite as much. The it had as many, so it had as many followers at the beginning. Penguin Pairs had as, yeah, so Logic Cards and Penguin Pairs, so the last two, had the same number of Kickstarter followers. Um,
Okay,
Possibly it
wow.
was, yeah,
Do you remember how many that was?
about 70.
And Penguin Pairs ended up with 157 backers,
Mm-hmm.
and Logic Cards ended up with 79.
Yeah.
And
So.
I mean, I have to admit, I was maybe dimly aware, but
Mhm.
I wasn't super aware that you were doing this. Otherwise, I would have
Yeah.
probably chucked in a quid just to kind of support you and be like,
Oh, thank
yeah,
you.
Jess is. I
Jess,
like the fact that
Jess is
Jess
doing another
is
one. Yeah.
making cards. I like that. I want to
Mhm.
support it. Even if I'm not necessarily buying a card for myself, I want to make it known that I like this thing going on. And yeah,
Yeah.
I know that when I do that, anyone who's following me will then see it pop up on their thing. Um,
Mm.
I it's difficult because it's never a straight line to success, and I
Mm.
think this is something that was saying on the stream yesterday because someone said in another video about TCGs that I watched, you can't just make 10 cards every day and after 10 days you'll have 100 cards and say, yeah,
Mhm.
boom, I've got my 100 cards, because some days will be worse and some days will be better. But even more
Yeah,
than
and they
that,
have to fit together as well. They have to be, coherent as well.
absolutely. And like it realistically, once you've done that, like in
Mhm.
the case of making a TCG, I would even go further and say, like, sometimes you need to scrap them all. And you realize, okay,
Mhm.
let's just make this fundamental change. And then we need to change all of these cards and we need to reevaluate them. It's an ongoing holistic process for sure. But like, I was disappointed, frankly, that my subsequent Bezzy bargain bags didn't do quite as well as a game about wee whimsical creatures and trying to identify them
Mm.
after some mixed noises. And I think that sometimes maybe logic just didn't hit.
Mm.
Maybe that wasn't. Oh,
Mm.
I want to make a game about penguins. Maybe people really like penguins.
Yeah.
Maybe it's a case of continuing to experiment. But
Mm.
I ask you again, what's the bit that um, takes away your energy? What's the bit that you're actually enjoying? Because if you are quite enjoying the doing a
Mhm.
Kickstarter and then having a fast turnaround, and you are happy, like if the money that you're going to end up with is enough for you to feel like,
Mm.
yeah, that's enough, then I would suggest keep doing it 3 times a
Mm.
year and
Yeah.
keep trying new things and trying
Mm.
new, maybe try something to do with cats and dogs because that's quite
Yeah.
popular. Try
Cats
something to
always
do
sells.
with hair. I don't know,
So
like
what am I
for like
enjoying?
hairdos.
Mm.
Maybe someone's got like like the afro. Someone's got to like the weaves. I don't know what kind of
I
game you could
think,
make out of that.
yeah, I'm just thinking. Wigs, maybe.
It could
What does
be
that lead you to? That leads you to either Regency England or, clearly, because
crowns,
I've been reading far too much children's literature, pigs. Wigs
pigs.
on pigs.
Oh, okay.
We've got a book called which is all about rhyming, and it's all about different animals on different things. It's called Oi Frog. Um, by the way, should you ever need a children's book, I recommend Oi Frog. It involves pigs and wigs and or I cannot remember all of them, but it's basically a completely rhyming thing. The cat has to sit on the mat, but then the frog has to sit on a log, but then he doesn't want to, and so he tries to go and sit on sofas, but there are gophers on the sofa, and anyway.
That's a half rhyme at best. Chips on bricks.
I cannot remember, but it is but it's very good.
I mean, it leads me to actually another logic puzzle. You know those ones where you need to create a line going from one thing to the other?
Yeah.
And if you had to connect the cat with the hat, and the dog with the log, and the
But
or
not cross lines, maybe. Oh, yeah, that
you
would be
can't cross
interesting.
line obviously, or
Yeah.
maybe it's a um game where, I mean, solo seems to be something that you want all your things to be, because otherwise I was thinking maybe one person is trying to connect
Mm.
some things and one person's trying to connect other things, which vaguely reminds me of Hex. Do you know that game?
I don't, but I'll go look it up.
But it's a lot more abstract, and
Mm.
I mean, have maybe a die, and then based on the dice, then you draw this many things, or you draw lines in this many squares, and then someone gets in your way. I
Mm.
don't know.
Yeah. Yeah. One of my daughter's friends had a book which was full of little puzzles and line drawing things and those sort of games where, so games like the game where you've got a whole load of dots and one player has to draw vertical lines and the other has to draw horizontal lines, and you've got to connect as many of the dots, and and the dot can only be, and a dot can only be connected to one other dot, and so you're basically trying to see who at the end has the most lines. Is it the vertical lines or the horizontal lines? It's
Hmm.
those kind of things. So yeah, anyway, that is something I shall be looking into more of. But you asked another question earlier, which I think leads on to this, which is what bit of it do I like best? And the thing is, I do enjoy, for these small Kickstarters, I do enjoy every bit of it. I mean, probably, uh, I do enjoy the sort of social media community stuff. I like being on Facebook, I like being on Twitter. I am not nearly as good on Instagram, because that often requires bigger blocks of text, and I haven't quite worked out how all the interaction happens on Instagram. It doesn't seem quite as instinctive to me. TikTok, I have literally downloaded last week, and I'm going to see whether I can make that work for me. I don't know. I'm not really a video person, so that may not work at all.
I do enjoy browsing Instagram somewhat,
Mm,
because it's like everyone that I follow, it's just people that share nice pictures, and I deliberately unfollow people if they're posting too much,
hmm
or if I don't like two of their things in a row, or
Yeah.
if it's like, you know what, this isn't, and if I've
hmm
unfollowed you, I do apologize, and it's nothing personal. I just can't, when I log on, it's not even something that I use that regularly. I
hmm
might log on twice a week, and I want to see maybe 10 pictures,
hmm
and that's for me, 10, 20 pictures is like a maximum that I can
Yeah.
really look at and feel like, okay, I'm not spending loads of time. And for me, if I follow you on Instagram, I look at everything. But if I don't follow you, maybe I'll occasionally check in. Joanne
Yeah.
says, I've unfollowed people on Instagram that do nothing but ads, but if they are friends, that's different. And for
Yeah.
me, if I unfollow you, that doesn't mean to me that we're not friends. That means that
That it doesn't
I'm
fit your Instagram needs. I mean,
just
I'm not even sure I have Instagram needs.
needing to take
Uh,
a wee break, because when
mm,
I look at it, I mean, as much as I love what you're doing, Joanne, like the truth is that I can't make it to all your streams. So, as much as I would love to support you, and I like occasionally hearing about what you're doing, seeing, oh, I'm doing this and I'm doing that, sometimes it makes me a little sad that I can't
mm,
join in. Do you know what I mean? And sometimes actually hearing about events that I know I can't be part of, it's like, oh, that's a little bit sad. And
mm,
Instagram for me is kind of like my happy place. And
mm.
like it's just,
Okay.
okay, here's a few pictures, and there's someone I there's a lot of people I follow that post like once a year
hmm
or something like that, which is why I do follow hundreds of people, but
Yeah.
again, if I ever have too many people to kind of sit down. I mean,
Mhm.
and I go, oh, but it's like, yeah, sometimes it just becomes,
Mhm.
okay, I'm needing to unfollow someone here,
Yeah.
and yeah,
But it is definitely the case that different platforms just cater for for different people's styles. And people
mm-mm.
find the platform that they're
And people
easiest,
have
yeah,
different
the best on.
styles with different platforms. I mean,
Mm,
I I saw that there's someone who was following like thousands of people, and I asked them, how do you actually follow them? And they
mm,
said, oh, we just, and then they showed me, oh, we just came through, and then we shared the love, and then they were just like, and then, but they clearly don't
mhm,
really engage with everything, if you know what I mean. And it's just, yeah, if we see it, we see it. If we don't, we don't. And for
mm,
me, that's kind of how I use
mm.
Facebook and Twitter. Like, if I see it, I see it. If I don't, I don't. But
Yeah.
yeah.
Ditto. Yeah, yeah, basically I need to see it in order for it to yeah. But I find that, so I find that the kind of while I don't think I'm particularly good at straight advertising, the community management, being there, hanging around with people, I am fairly good at that. I enjoy social media, I enjoy the Kickstarter. I actually do enjoy the logistics of it. And, I enjoy the creation of the games. I enjoy the making of the artwork, because for the greetings cards, I do all of the artwork as well. For Library Labyrinth, most of the proper art was done by Sam, the character art, though I did a lot of the graphics and things. So I do a lot of the different things. For small Kickstarters, I wouldn't say that I actively enjoy putting things into envelopes and putting the labels on, but I don't mind it. I really don't mind
Mm-mm.
it. Plus, I certainly mind
What would you
doing
say is
that.
the cutoff when you do actually start minding it? Would it be like maybe 200 people? Would that be sort of where it
Uh,
get, or is it 100? Like, was 159 already kind of, oh, that I'm starting to get a bit unhappy towards the end.
I
Is it
have
so
done
repetitive?
right. So if it's things like putting cards into letters and things, um when they all fit really easily, and it's like really simple and you're like, yeah, this is perfect, then I am perfectly happy going up to, I'm perfectly happy with, a couple of hundred of them.
Mm-mm.
Um for Disarm the Base, which of course was a boxed board game, which I sent out the end of 2019, actually, the beginning of 2020, the end of 2019. I sent out about 300 packages, and 300 packages by
And
the
it
end
says
of that.
240 backers.
Yeah, but it was just before Christmas, so I had quite a lot of people who weren't on the Kickstarter.
Okay.
Yeah, so basically once we'd done the Kickstarter, then I sent emails to all of the Quaker meetings saying, hey, would you like one of these? So I got a whole load of those because I had 500 games basically. Yeah, so I had the 240 backers, which wasn't quite 240 parcels. It were,
Mm-mm. Anyway,
yeah.
so you had about 300 and you
Yeah, I
were
had
feeling
about
a bit fed up
300.
by the end?
I was really fed up. I mean, probably about 200 or so, was the point where I started getting really fed up. So, it's difficult.
Thank you so much for popping
Ah.
in, Joanne, and I hope that you have a lovely day.
Mm.
And bye for now.
One of
But
the things I wanted to
what
say
I'm
though was,
hearing is that
mm,
for you, Jess, if even though you want growth in a sense because you feel like
mm,
that's what you have to do, it sounds like actually if it were to grow up to 300 people, maybe
yeah,
you'd be fed up by the end, and maybe this is the right way. I mean, if
yeah,
and so I think that um
maybe
what
I'd
you
enjoy it less. Yeah. The other thing is that it's different things. And this is something I was talking about on Twitter and Facebook yesterday, that while I enjoy all of those things, to a certain degree, and while I'm even good at some of them, and that includes things like, for Library Labyrinth, there were a lot of logistics and graphic design and things, which are less present when you've got greetings cards, because I'm not shipping greetings cards over from China. I'm getting them delivered by van. It's much easier. Yeah. Um, but that but it's actually really difficult to shift from one thing to another. So I can do the artwork, I can do the creative stuff, and I really enjoy drawing. And I do also enjoy the you know the putting all the stuff into Kickstarter. So I did genuinely enjoy getting my spreadsheet, going, okay, well, if I sell these cards at this price, this is how much it costs to get them printed. If it's this, so this is the price I'm going to set, and therefore these are the shipping prices I'm going to set, and everything. And I do genuinely enjoy that kind of project management, but I can't do them both on the same brain. I've
Yeah,
got to have a break
and
between
it
them.
sounds like you do enjoy all of this, and I know
Mm,
it is like we are at 11:11 UK
yeah,
time, and
so we
this is a
should probably. Yeah.
but the other things that you wanted to talk about, like you want to talk about shifting tasks, and it
It's so
sounds like
difficult.
the thing is we enjoy it, and I'm just saying that ideally, if I'm drawing, I want to sit down for a good like 8 hours. Sure, I might have
Mm,
like a quick break to eat or a quick break like after a couple of hours to just be out of the house to stretch my legs. But we want to we both want to do one thing for an extended period of time, but then at
yeah.
the same time we both enjoy the fact that we get to do multiple things. I mean, honestly, I would be probably very happy doing just the design and and a bit of the development and having someone else do all the arts and focusing on just one thing. But
Mhm.
there is for sure satisfaction at the end being like, yeah, I did this, and all the illustration you can see, I did that, and I'm quite happy, and I
Yeah.
project managed it, and made all the decisions. But I think that there's no simple solution, but it feels like a conversation to continue next time, maybe.
Absolutely. Let's think about that next time, because I think it's something that, this is clearly not just us. You
Mm-mm.
know, this is something where a lot of people find they have the same thing. And, I think actually it might be good to think about solutions to this. Because various people on Twitter have been saying, "Oh, this is what I use in order to get over that." So it
Mm-mm.
is a really common problem that if you've got different things which you're doing, then it is really hard for somebody to suddenly go, "Oh, right, I'm going to be creative. Oh no, I'm suddenly going to shift into answering emails and doing my accounts."
And the final thing I wanted to talk about,
Mm,
which is kind of related, is avoidance. Because
mm,
I've been starting these yeah, to-do lists with us. I made a post on Facebook asking if anyone was happy to see some of my
mm,
to-do lists. And in theory, I was going to post something every day. But then the truth is that sometimes I'm like, yeah, I didn't do that. And I feel a bit sad about how little I did. But then I
mm,
look at it and I did say a few weeks ago when I didn't go to Nuremberg that I did want to
mhm.
hibernate. I've not really done that. And so it partially, is it the same as you where you feel like you have to grow but you don't really? I mean, is it
Mm,
that I feel like I have to do a lot more than I actually do?
mm,
Conversely, is it that am are there times when I occasionally put off something and it's easy to not face that? And by writing it down, then it kind of forces me to confront it, which I
yeah,
should be doing for sure. It's important to confront these things and to be honest with yourself. But so
yeah.
that feels like a topic for another time.
This feels like a big conversation, and I think think actually this might be something to pick up next time, to go, oh, actually, how do
Yeah.
all these things, how do we do it? How do we do all these different bits of the job?
And make sure it's about the prioritization. It's about the difficulty is that we are self-managing, because a good
Hmm.
manager is a wonderful thing. Someone who says, you know
Oh,
what, these
yes.
are the things that you have to do. And this is, if you don't get this done, don't worry about it so much. I mean, it's good if you to get it, but this is a bit that absolutely has to be done. And typically, if you go to a job, a good manager should be the one
Mm.
who gives you a amount of work that you are able to do, and then tells you what order and what priority to do it in. And so you're like, yeah, I'm confident in my progress
Yeah.
that. And whereas if you're working for yourself, there's always this little feeling of, oh, am I doing the right thing? I don't know.
It's really hard to be your own
Hmm.
manager. It's really difficult
You
because a
know,
good
this
manager is
was
there
us
to,
all
yeah.
talking about recent highlights. We never actually talked about brilliant thing, what's the little thing, which is brilliant. I'm going to say wires are quite brilliant. I know that there's a big thing about wireless headphones and all that, but I really like wires because you plug them in, you don't need to
I
charge
quite
them.
like wires.
I think wires are cool, and it's like,
Most things are
phew.
wired. Most things are wired in our house. I mean, yeah, obviously we've got Wi-Fi, but a lot of other things are wired, headphones, keyboards. And one of the points though is because then I know what's actually plugged in and what isn't. Yeah, because
Yes.
otherwise, I'm there going, which headphones am I wearing? Where does it go? Which are where? And so, yeah, it's
And
far easier.
I never really reminded people
Mm.
to feel free to comment, ask questions.
Yeah.
So I'm like, well, it was lovely to have you jump
Mhm.
in to me and Joanne. And if anyone asks a question, I do always answer all the respectful comments, although it might take me a few days theoretically, but I do always get to all of them that I see. And question of the day. Here's a little question before we go on our way. The question of the day that I want to ask you is: is there something that you is making you unhappy? Like, it sounds quite a bit negative, but is there something that you feel like, oh, that's making me unhappy? Maybe I could discard it. Like, is there something that you're like, oh, maybe it's something that I need to get done, and then maybe when I have it done, I'll be a little bit happier with myself, or maybe it's a, you know what, this for me the big thing is actually going to be the level of disorganization, and I look around and it just seems like an insurmountable
Mm.
level of to-do lists of box. That's not even stock. That's stock down there, which is out of stock shot, but that's just personal belongings. That's stuff that's some of it I'm kind of working on. Stuff from like now played this last year, which is kind of ridiculous, and I need to organize it, and I wanted to get it
Mm.
up on Instagram, and stuff to get played and then gotten rid of. But
Yeah.
yeah, my big thing is honestly the mess here, the clutter.
Yeah. We have a little bit of that. We bought a bookcase, which is coming upstairs, hopefully later today, which is going to sort out our paper filing. The paper filing, well, the paper filing was all over the floor and is now living in a box. But there's just, we tend to be not, I tend to be not very organized in the sense that I've got loads of things and they're just not quite in the right place. So I completely see that. What's making so I've got a little list of things which I need to do, so I will be happier when we have built the shed. We only have half a shed in the back garden because they forgot the floor in the order and we can't start building it until the floor arrives for the shed. And so there's quite a few things like that. But there was one there's a volunteer committee I'm on, which I have now. Well, I will come off this summer, so I'm feeling that that's going to free up a little bit more time. And I'm like, actually, sometimes it's important to look at the amount of time I'm putting into things and say, actually, can I afford all of this time going to things which are not directly making me happy? So I have, I have said no to one thing, which is good. I'm feeling very good about that.
Sorry, had to unmute myself. It sounds. I'm glad that the shed and everything is
Mm,
going to give you space to organize things, and it sounds like it's more about adding on more space to
mm,
give you space to put stuff. Whereas for me, because I am in a preparing for emigration kind of
mm,
mindset, it is a little bit different. And
yeah.
yeah, I think that sometimes I feel like, yeah, you know what? I bought a whole lot of Time Stories. I bought the entire White Box series,
Mhm.
and I would like to play through it. One. I played through one and a half with one other person, and then we've kind of decided that that's probably
Mm,
not going to be something we carry on doing together because it seems like I could just as easily play it on my own. But then,
mhm,
truth is, when I'm sitting down, and sometimes if I get it out, it's almost like I don't know what it is. I feel like slightly guilty, like, oh, I'm taking all this time to do
mhm,
something myself, and it's not like I can legitimately call it research. I've played enough of Time Stories now to know how I feel about the overall structure.
mhm,
I don't, and so it's an indulgence. And whereas when it's shared with other people, it feels like, okay, I'm not only indulging my love of rule sets but I'm also building up this time with other people. But yeah, it feels like I need to sort of get over that and allow myself times when it is just me. And rather than go on the internet and be like, okay, I'm going to watch this video and maybe I'm only
mhm,
doing this for half an hour, but like, you know what? I am just going to
mhm.
enjoy this time for myself, if you know what I mean. Enjoy
Yeah.
these few hours because, like, yes, I've got stuff that I should be doing. Like, broadly speaking, yes, there's a
Mhm,
lot of stuff that I absolutely have to do, but it doesn't mean that I don't, if I'm not feeling up to it, maybe I'm just fooling myself by saying, okay, I'm just
mhm.
going to watch this short thing, or yeah, I also started playing all the games on Board Game Arena. I've got about 200 left to go, which is not that many. I've played
Hey!
about 400, and I've
That
got
is very impressive, actually.
but it doesn't mean I actually know the rules to all of them because that kind of takes care of it,
Mhm,
which is, and there might have been a few where I passed a lot more than was strategically correct because I was
right.
okay. What happens if I click here?
Mhm,
Okay, that means that I get nothing. Okay, that was a bad move. Okay, and but then anyway, probably do a show all about that once I've actually finished. But over to you, what are you up to? You can share Botany if you want to. In my mind, um, so there's a nearby club type thing on Mondays and Wednesdays, and actually I would like you to help
mm,
me here, Jess, because
yeah.
part of me knows that when I go out with other people, it's not about having a drink, although
Mm,
sometimes, I'll buy a drink, sometimes I'll get bought a drink,
mhm,
sometimes I'll just stand around and chat to people and I'll forget about, the liquid refreshments completely. But it's about being with other people and about sharing that space. And
mhm.
for me, that's a wonderful thing. But right now, I don't know if you can hear, I do have a little bit of a blocked nose. Oh,
Mm.
you can hear. And
Well, you sound a little bit, just a little bit, hoarse at times, towards the end
okay.
of this, you've sort of yeah, there's a little bit the cold in your no yeah, the cold in your nose sense that you
And
get
I'm feeling
sometimes.
like I need to blow it out for sure. And
Oh.
on Monday, I was like looking forward to it, and I thought, oh, you know what, I'm not up to it. Oh, when I actually, and I made the decision to just stay in bed, and
Mhm,
I feel like parts of me would like to go out and be with other people. that would be like the bulk of my Wednesday, and that goes on from like 1 o'clock until 9 o'clock. Honestly, like I normally get there like 3 or something, and I stay on. Like parts of me wonders, uh, should I instead stay home? Whether that means playing time stories, which is something that I would actually like to work through, or whether that means honestly, like I'm probably going to leave this until Thursday. Like I'm probably not going to do anything major design wise today.
Yep.
But that could also mean um, playing a bunch of people on Board Game Arena. It might, and I would try to get out just for the sake of being out of the house for a quick walk. But
Yeah.
yeah, it's a. What do you think, Jess?
So I think that seeing people is
Maybe I should make
important.
a Twitter poll.
Maybe you
If
should
I
make a Twitter poll. Seeing people is really important, and I think from having met you and what I know of you, then it seems like it's more important to you than it is to me. That you see people. Plus, of course, when you don't see as many people, then perhaps you need to make that up by seeing more people in one go sometimes. And you're like, I've got to get out and do things. So I think that seeing people is really important. You should probably, prioritize that. But yeah, getting out of the house and having exercise is also, one of those things that can
I
so
mean,
easily be
either way,
forgotten.
like I'm going to, if I
Mhm.
went there, I'd be cycling. It's not
Oh, that,
lots.
yeah.
It would be like a maybe 30 minutes combined cycle there and back.
Mhm.
But
That sounds perfect.
so you think I should go out,
I think
and
you should
even if
go.
I've got a bit of a blocked nose, just go out. Okay.
Yeah.
And hello, Mike, XXL Black Sheep. It's
Ooh.
lovely to see you. And yeah, we're just discussing what I should do today. Um, I was considering between just cozying up in bed and not doing much, maybe spending a bulk of the day playing through time stories or actually getting out. And part of the thing that also concerns me is getting out when I am actually feeling a bit hot, when I feel myself. I don't have a.
Yeah. That see, that is always a really difficult judgment. Supposing you're just feeling a bit, sort of block nose and a bit, actually, I'm not sure that it's fine. But if you're feeling like you might be coming down with a fever, you suddenly sort of go, oh, actually, do you have something that you wouldn't want to give give to somebody else?
And I
That
know
becomes
that
a
if
different
I go
consideration.
there, then it's if I have anything, then I will probably
Mhm.
pass it on.
Yeah, so that
And
suddenly becomes a thing. Oh, yeah.
um, do a wee COVID test. I think Black Sheep
Yeah.
is saying. I'm not sure I have any testing things left.
They don't always pick up various things. We've
But
had
it's
all
not
sorts of
just
things
about
recently.
COVID. I mean, other
Mhm.
bad things do exist. And especially nowadays, I think that people who are going out have had enough jabs. And I know the place, it is an unmasked place. People who are there are all taking the risk, but there are other things as well, if you know what I mean. It's not
We have
just.
we have a lot of colds. I've recently had a couple of different colds, but that's because I have primary school age children. Hey, all the colds.
I think that I am going to get a shower and then see how I
Mm,
feel. I think that that feels like
good
a good
plan.
idea because if I'm going out, I need to get showered. And if I'm not going out, it's still nice to kind of shower for
Mhm.
yourself and just wash the dirt off, and I'll have a wee scrub. And yeah,
Cool.
see how I feel after that. But yeah, if I if the idea of traveling, getting on my bike and for a wee bit is filling me with trepidation, then I probably shouldn't go, but I will make sure to go out
Mhm.
anyway. But
Cool.
yes, Jess, is there something you quickly want to share?
Well, at some point during the next week, I'm going to be building a shed. Yay! From a
Amazing.
kit.
So, we
When the
can't have
floor arrives.
that before we finish up. We talked about my DCG and the modularity. Uh, that's the wrong way around. Um, we talked
Yay!
about, um, yes, I am kind of distracts myself from other stuff that
Mm.
needs to be done, but like that's kind of okay as long as I'm mindful of that. We talked
Mhm.
about being disappointed by lack of constant growth. But again, maybe that's just something that the capitalistic society tells us we need growth, growth, growth.
Mm.
And that's neither sustainable nor is it necessarily desirable because if you hate shipping out 300 backers worth of stuff, then you clearly don't want to grow that much. And we talked about wires being brilliant, about shifting from job to job and about making sure you know what you're meant to be doing, which is something that I think is going to be an ongoing conversation and maybe the primary topic of conversation for us in a fortnight. We talked
Yep.
about, my challenge of deciding what to do, the way I approach Instagram, like advertising these things, and we had just a bit of a blether. And so for now, if you want to check me out, I am, of course, Stuff by Bez in all of the places. And oh, yes, on Thursday, I don't think I've got anything particularly scheduled. As always, if you've got any questions and the question deserves a full show, then I will give it to a full show on Saturday. I will be at Friendly Board Gamer Convention and I will be doing a quick recap of there. And Sunday, I'm sure that I'll be talking more about my deck construction game, given that I'll have had opportunities to play test it on Friday, which is always my favorite day. And well, I say always, I mean, nothing's any big sweeping statements like that. There's always, well, there was that one time, that one Friday, or, but yes, and if you want to check out Jess,
Yay!
where would you like to be found?
So I am found most often on Twitter. Twitter is the place that I hang out most, where I am Descent Games. You can also come to descentgames.com, which is sort of a broad overview of the things we do and has got things like the greetings cards on it, or Library Labyrinth, which is the big game, da-da-da, which is out probably, well, it's due to actually arrive with me mid-March, and then you could also go to Disarm the Base, which is the previous game, and find me on Facebook as well. I'm also on Facebook, but Twitter is where I hang out most.
Well, lots of love to everyone. If you enjoyed this, then share, spread the word. If you have anything that you feel like we should chat more about or any ideas for future stuff, then please let us know. In any case, thank you very much, everyone, for being here. Most importantly, thank you, Jess,
Thank you.
for being a regular, lovely guest. And
Thank you.
whilst I will drastically slow down and eventually stop the show after episode 1000, I'm thinking that I might keep the Wednesdays going, which will basically alternate between
Yay.
Jess and Alan Paul. So it will be, we'll talk about the mechanic one week and then we'll talk about something else the other week. And, but yeah, when we get to episode 1000, now it's only 92 to go. And that will hopefully be a big thing. But for now, lots of love to everyone. And the only thing left to say is bye, 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 bye. This is a goodbye song. Bye, 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 bye. Thank you for watching along. Bye, 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 bye. This is the end of the show. Bye, 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 bye. And now it's time to go. Bye, 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 bye. This is a goodbye song. Bye, 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 bye. Thank you for watching along. Bye, 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 bye. This is the end of the show. Bye, 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 bye. And now it's time to go. Bye, bye, everyone.